Thank you very much, colleagues and representatives from different government entities as well. We are here together for to discuss a very important issue, which is to accelerate investments in the blue economy. And as you know, blue economy and finance is relatively a nascent area, but countries and development partners are making efforts to make use of the ocean economy and explore this innovative source of finance. The concept does promote economic growth, social inclusion, and improved livelihoods, and at the same time ensures the environmental sustainability of oceans and seas. It defines a new paradigm of ocean economy, one that is in balance with the long-term capacity of the assets, goods and services, and that also considers social inclusiveness. So we are basically here to listen to the experts on how on what are the developments around blue finance, and what are the experiences around different countries. So we are grateful for the panelists who are here today, and I'll now pass it on to Radhika Lal, who will be the overall moderator for this webinar. Over to you, Radhika.
Thank you very much, Asadji, and welcome to all the participants. Actually, I'm going to now turn to Anne to offer a few remarks.
Thank you very much, Radhika. It's indeed a pleasure to be here with everybody. The concept of a blue economy came out of the 2012 Rio+20 conference. It is based on the premise that healthy and sustainable ocean ecosystems are more productive and a must for sustainable ocean-based economies and livelihoods. This concept promotes economic growth, social inclusion, and improved livelihoods at the same time as ensuring the environmental sustainability of oceans and seas. It defines a new paradigm of ocean economy, one that is in balance with the long-term capacity of the assets, goods, and services of marine ecosystems, and that considers social inclusiveness. It is important for the countries to capitalize on blue assets, but while securing these opportunities, poverty and environment dimensions should also be integrated into the blue economy planning and financing mechanisms being developed by member states and key development partners in Asia and the Pacific. This is a relatively nascent area, but countries and development partners are making efforts to make use of the ocean economy and explore this innovative source of finance. The knowledge base and experience is limited but growing. In order to accelerate the process, it is vital for countries and development partners to share their knowledge and experiences. UNDP, UNEP, Poverty Environment Action for SDGs, or PEAR, has been working on mainstreaming poverty, environment, climate, and gender objectives into the blue economy concept. The project has provided technical support to initiatives at country and regional level. In particular, the project has been working with the Asian Development Bank and has prepared a joint report on opportunities and challenges for investment in the sustainable blue economy of Asia and the Pacific, as well as on additional steps to operationalize it. The joint ADB-PEAR knowledge product on the blue economy will inform the planning and implementation of ADB's Ocean Finance Initiative. One of the recommendations from this report is to establish a joint ADB, UNEP, UNDP Blue Invest Asia platform to mobilize public and private financing for the SDGs. We will have a presentation on this later in this webinar. We are very pleased to note that PEA has been working closely with UNDP's governance of climate change finance in Asia Pacific, who are supporting us in this webinar and who are also supporting the piloting of the Blue Invest Asia approach in selected countries, together with the Nature Climate Energy team, which leads UNDP's Blue Economy work. One of the strengths of this joint UNDP-UNEP-PEA initiative is being able to draw on our organization's broader experience and expertise. The objective of this webinar is to increase awareness of the work being done on blue economy under PEA, but also to get feedback from you, the participants, to guide our work under the PEA programs next year, and to inform the proposed ADB, UNEP, and UNDP Blue Invest Asia platform. Last, but certainly not least, please allow me to welcome Mr. Peter Thomson, UN Special Envoy on Oceans, who has kindly agreed to give us a keynote speech today. So without further ado, thank you very much, and I wish all of us a very productive webinar today. Thank you.
We will turn now to Sofiane Majhoub, who is UNDP SIDS Blue Economy Specialist, coming to us direct from Fiji. Thank you so much, Sofiane, for making time for this, and love your background, Rising Up for SIDS. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Radhika. Okay, perfect. So thank you very much again, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. So again, I'm Sofiane Majhoub. I'm the Small Island Developing States Blue Economy Specialist for UNDP. And I'm very pleased to be here with you today. So in this presentation, I will try to provide some general background on sustainable blue economy before other colleagues will speak about how to accelerate blue investments. And I would like to start today's presentation by underlining the importance of the oceans for life on Earth, but also for our economic development. First, we have to remember that the ocean is responsible for the production of half of the oxygen on our planet. This oxygen is mainly produced by microscopic organisms called phytoplankton, like the ones on this picture. The oceans also regulate the climate. Carbon sinks like seagrass beds, but also mangroves, capture carbon dioxide and store it. And they're actually even more efficient in doing this than terrestrial forests. The oceans also feed us. And according to the FAO, around 96 million tons of seafood were produced in 2018. And that accounts for 17% of animal protein intake globally. The oceans also provide jobs and support industries like tourism, which are really important for many countries, especially small island developing states where I'm based now. And finally, the oceans facilitate commercial exchanges. Actually, maritime transport is responsible for nearly 80% of the world trade. So the market value of all these ocean services on the global scale has been estimated to range between 1.5 to 2.5 trillion US dollar per year. And these numbers do not even include non-market benefits like cultural and social values. And among the main contributors to this economic output, we can cite fisheries and aquaculture with $362 billion every year, transport and shipping with $435 billion every year, and coastal tourism that provides $225 billion every year. Now, the importance of the oceans and their contribution to sustainable economic development has been more and more recognized during the last decade. And actually a specific focus on ocean has even been included in the SDGs with SDG 14 and its 10 targets. And actually implementing SDG 14 helps addressing most, if not all other SDGs. So if you see in this graphic, we can see the relative importance of each of the targets of the SDG 14 listed here on the left-hand side of the screen, to the other SDGs. The bigger the bubble, the higher the importance. So for example, we can see that the implementation of SDG 14 is critical for poverty and hunger eradication. We can also see that SDG 14 has very strong linkages with climate action. And this has actually been recognized during the last COP26 and anchored in the Glasgow Climate Pact. So in order to define what sustainable blue economy is, we first have to acknowledge that the use of ocean for economic growth is actually not something new. There are several established blue economy sectors like fishing, maritime transport, coastal tourism that play very important roles in the economies of many countries. And there are also other emerging blue economy sectors. And these may include aquaculture, marine renewable energies, and also marine biotechnology. But what is actually new with the concept of sustainable blue economy is the recognition of the importance of ocean health for the sustainability of our economic development. So for a sustainable blue economy to emerge, we need that this economic development or economic growth driven by any of the established or emerging sectors to be in balance with social well-being and also with the long-term capacity of the ocean ecosystems. And in UNDP, we actually define the blue economy as the sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth, jobs and social and financial inclusion, with a focus on preservation and restoration of the health of ocean ecosystems and the services they provide. And in order to accelerate this blue economy transformation and to put this concept into practice, governments would normally develop the blue economy framework. So the process would normally start with the adoption of the blue economy concept by the government, but also by other stakeholders. Then there will be a phase of participatory policy development. This will be followed by the approval of these policies. And then we can start the development of a strategy and an action plan. So the plan would normally include the vision. That means where the country wants to be and when. It will include the goals, what the country wants to do. And finally, the strategy. That means the actions to be taken to achieve the goals. So this strategic planning will also include the identification by also the prioritization of the country's blue economy sectors based on its strategic advantages. So some countries, maybe like SIDS, maybe would like to focus on tourism, sustainable tourism, maybe on fisheries and things like that, depending on the strategic advantages. Ideally, this strategy should also be accompanied by an investment. Finally, of course, we will go through a phase of implementation and evaluation of objectives. There are several critical success factors I would like to highlight for a blue economy transformation to be successful. The first one is a healthy marine environment supported by a robust and effectively enforced environment management framework. It is good to have a healthy marine environment. It is good to have a good regulation, but we also need to be able to enforce them. It's also important to invest in capacity, in knowledge, that means research and innovation. Blue economy also has to be linked to national development priorities. This is very important in order to gain leverage. And one of the most important things is that the approach to ocean governance should be an integrated, inclusive, and also multi-stakeholder process. Because blue economy alone cannot necessarily ensure economic development. And in the case of small island developing states that heavily rely on the oceans for their development, UNDP has a specific offer that we call Rising Up for SIDS, with all of climate action, blue economy, and digital transformation as 3 integrated pillars and sustainable finance as an enabler. And the last critical success factor I would like to mention is a favorable investment framework. In fact, the transition to a sustainable blue economy would require mechanisms to provide financing for conservation and restoration, investments to improve the sustainability and profitability of existing sectors, but also investments to support the development of new and emergent sectors. There are mainly three different types of financial capital available for blue economy development. These can be impact only, debt, and equity. But not all capital types are compatible with all blue economy sectors. So this table here provides an illustration of the alignment between different types of capital and different types of blue economy sector. The green color here will indicate a good match, whereas blue means a weaker match. So for example, if we look at the first line, ecosystem restoration would mainly be financed by impact-only capital, like grants and philanthropies, whereas debt and equity would be more appropriate for aquaculture, for example. And this would, of course, mainly come from private sector. So to conclude, a successful approach to the blue economy would be one that blends different types of financing as to cover all of the different financing. I will stop here and thank you very much, and over to you, Ravi.
Thank you very much, Sofiane, and also for keeping time actually on the dot. Many interesting points were raised, and actually your presentation provides a perfect segue for Michael to come in. Michael Adams is from the Oceans Assets Institute and has been leading this work on the investment platform. And I'm also very pleased to see Thomas Kessler here from ADB, and perhaps he'll come in later on with a few remarks. But over to you, Michael, to discuss this missing middle. We know that SMEs form the backbone of the blue economy in many of the, not only the small island states, but many of the economies, and yet financing is extraordinarily difficult. And so we want to hear all about this Blue Invest Asia platform and some of the work that's been done jointly to make it easier to get financing. Sofiane spoke about having a good investment climate. So perhaps you will tell us a little bit more about what it takes to get financing for SMEs in the Asia Pacific. Over to you.
Yes, thank you both. Sofiane, you set the stage so well. There is so much to do and so many components of a successful financing of this transition that we're really all trying to participate in to a more sustainable blue economy in the region. So Blue Invest Asia is the name we've given to a financing platform, a digital financing platform that embraces some 30 countries across developing Asia and the Pacific, with all the blue economy sectors that were just cited, the sustainable ones, again, nice point that you made there. And let me walk you through quickly what we're planning to do here. Let me try to minimize that. Yeah, so we identified a roughly $1 trillion gap of financing for SMEs to reach the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. SMEs within the Asia Pacific region again, and in the blue economy. So the overall gap that we identified was 5.5 trillion. All this, I will tell you in a few slides later, was part of the Blue Economy Knowledge Product. And we make a variety of assumptions which are very clear in that product, knowledge product, so that anyone can change the assumptions and come up with different numbers. But let's just say it's safe to say there's at least a $1 trillion gap to achieve sustainability by 2030 in the blue economy sectors in the region. So again, just from the small and medium enterprises, obviously the bigger needs are for infrastructure, the bigger capital needs are for infrastructure and so forth. But what do we do about the missing middle? And we'll tell you in a slide why that's so important. The missing middle is the SMEs, and we're defining them for the purposes of this pilot exercise, which will begin shortly and run over the next year, as those companies that have current revenues of around $500,000, employees greater than 10, capital needs of over $200,000. Now we can go down on all those numbers depending on the situation, particularly early stage when you may not have much in revenues, but show a lot of opportunity and possibility, as well as going up. But once you get up to the larger scale companies of $10 million and up, the private equity managers and some of the commercial banks do get interested. Although I have to say it really starts at 15 and 20, and with the shock of COVID, capital is very scarce to small and medium enterprises in general, and particularly in emerging markets. So the platform itself has these two components. One, we're building a pipeline of blue SMEs with the support of sources throughout the region, from everything from fund managers to ports and industry associations, governments, and industry groups. The second pillar are the funders whom we're bringing together on this platform, public and private funders and philanthropic. So there's a role of catalytic funding, and the leverage ratio can go from 1 to 1 initially all the way up to 1 to 4. In other words, 4 times the amount of capital that was originally placed. And that may happen over time so that we can get to these markers of 500 million plus over 5 years, and targeting 250 or more blue SMEs. And this is terrific impact because it stretches across many sectors, many countries. And what we're looking for also are the kind of companies and projects that are scalable and potentially replicable across other regions and countries. The knowledge product that I mentioned and Radhika mentioned comprised 4 different sections. And we mapped out the blue economy. What are the sectors? Sofiane just treated that quite well. We went into great depth on this across all the countries and rating them according to criteria of bankability, impact, and so forth. The section 2, we compiled all the metrics that are being used actively by the financial players, as well as industry groups and governments, to evaluate sustainability and bankability. So we have a map. You'll be able to see all this is in the lower yellow, bright yellow box. Hopefully by mid-December, we have a matrix that is very user-friendly that we think for the first time has compiled all these different standards and metrics. Section 3, as I mentioned earlier, we had to quantify what is the gap. What are the real needs that we can identify for each blue economy sector, again, just in the region, minus the committed capital that we could see. And that creates the gap that is the great challenge we were all trying to solve. And so that's an interesting section to look at, again, when that report comes out. Section 4 was what's happening in the marketplace, the capital markets, who is playing in emerging markets in general, and then dive down into the Asia Pacific region and into the blue economy sectors. And what is their appetite, given all the shocks from both economic shocks and pandemic shocks and so forth, and environmental and climate. So that was a fairly current compilation of an analysis of surveys and sounding of actual players in the market to come up with this final report and recommendations that you will see soon. The problem for the blue SMEs, again, in general, it's the missing middle. It always has been, no matter really what the region. The problem is more acute when you're dealing with the vast territory of the Asia Pacific region and the particular problems of development needs, as well as especially the poverty environment agenda and gender. So, but it's so important because you have 70% of, at least 70% of employment comes from small, medium enterprises. And again, the emphasis is on the small, on the S. Over 90% of the enterprises in our countries are, in fact, small and medium enterprises. So you're not going to get the sustainability that we all seek, and or the economic growth by just focusing on infrastructure and sovereign loans at all. And yet, it's a particular challenge. that we are facing here. And the funders on the other side, this is as a friend of mine who runs the Conservation Finance Alliance, David Myers, who will be part of this platform, by the way. As he said, well, this is the holy grail. If you can develop a system to generate well-screened projects and match them up with investors in blended finance structures that de-risk the opportunity somewhat, that's the holy grail. And on the right there, you see the funders that do need that pipeline, and they will be very interested in participating with what we're developing here. Just to show you what we're talking about, we did a preliminary call for applications for SMEs across the region earlier this year. And these four were the ones that passed our screens, and we did complete investment dossiers on them. This will also be included in the Blue Economy Knowledge product that you will see in the next month or so. So just quickly looking through them, the kinds of things we're looking at. Overall, the capital needs of these four ranged from $3 million for the Marine Ecosystems project in the middle there by Blue Finance in the Philippines, $3 million for that, in a package of grants and CapEx loans, all the way up to 14 million for the last one, which is a combination actually of two projects, two SMEs. And so here you have quite a wide range of really innovative solutions that are each one highly scalable and replicable across the region. So those are some of the things we look at. And yet it is very challenging for them to find capital and to find the long-term capital that matches, that is aligned with their objectives, which are not just financial, but have impact ones as well. Yet we are very confident that by this process of aggregating and getting some blended finance behind it, that this will be very appealing to the many institutional investors that have very large allocations, almost unrealistically large allocations, given the lack of pipeline for impact investments in the region. And the blue economy has become more and more topical, as we all know. So we have a seafood processing plant that will be the first carbon neutral seafood processing plant in Asia. On the top, Meliomar, the Blue Finance, as I mentioned, which is a bankable way to manage on an ongoing basis marine protected areas. And then the combination of a seaweed processing operation across Indonesia, as well as a blockchain technology system that supports it and supports the build out of this very hot sector of seaweed worldwide, in fact. So that's just to give you a sense. So we really did go into the bottom-up process of identifying opportunities, building a pipeline process, having applications and running them through our criteria, and then working closely with them to develop that investment readiness that is needed so much. How am I doing on time, by the way, Radhika? Tell me if I need to speed up.
Yes.
It's okay. Okay. So we didn't think this up out of the blue. I was very involved in the design and launch of Blue Invest Europe. So you can tell we've stolen the name, borrowed the name from them, from this inspiration. In 2018, the European Commission hired us and a small team to solve the same problem. We identified the financing gap, a huge financing gap for small, medium enterprises in the blue economy in Europe. And we had the mandate to come up with some strategy for it. And we came up with this plan, which they have since implemented, with the some of the markers on the bottom that have been, a note of the success of this. Over 1,000 members, that includes from investors to small, medium enterprises and supporting organizations, are part of this ecosystem now. 170 SMEs have been helped through this investment readiness program, which we will have a similar one. $300 million have been, actually it's euros, have been mobilized towards those, towards a selection of those 170 companies. A 12% jobs increase over really, it's a 3-year period. And allocations have been made to 5 fund managers, 5 European-based fund managers on a matching basis, where they get roughly $10 million, and then they have to, within a year, raise another 10 million from their client base to allocate towards a blue portfolio of SMEs within Europe. So right away you double it, well, within the 12 months. And then after that, you get the 3 to 4 times leverage over time as growth in the portfolio and other investors come in. So it is our model, and we are taking parts of it that are appropriate for Asia Pacific and developing other parts because of the unique challenges of our region. Here's what it looks like on, sorry for all these little things. Here's what the structure looks like. Basically, there are 2 arms of this project. One is the servicing arm, which we expect to be running with partners. And I have to say, again, the qualifier, this was on the title page at the very beginning, that this overall program is, obviously this is a work in progress, so it's under discussion with the 3 co-sponsors of the Blue Economy Knowledge Product, Asian Development Bank, UNEP, and UNDP. So this is all under development, but this is what we know works and what we're outlining here in this pilot for over the next year. So the servicing arm has these functions of the pipeline development and the investment readiness or coaching process, the screening of the fund managers with criteria that we are getting from many of the people on this webinar, a community forum where all the stakeholders can engage. The digital platform itself, really, we're working so that is state of the art. It really has to be credible and to be user-friendly in our age today, and to reach all the, this is such a diverse area when you compare to Europe. Europe looks easy. And in addition to all the different challenges of the developing world. And it also will embrace industry partners. Strategic venturing among industry partners, particularly in the maritime sectors, is a—
Michael,
yes.
Could I ask you to start wrapping up? And then we can pick up some of, just to leave enough time for questions.
I'll cut over to the investing part just to say that obviously that's the part, then Sofiane gave some of the background for it, of bringing together the various funders under a blended finance scheme and a multi-manager platform that will make allocations to regional managers. The collaborations are outlined here among both UNDP, UNEP, and Asian Development Bank, the different departments' expertise and the roles they might have. And I just want to end with this because this is exciting. We have already developed gotten the, let's say, agreement in principle for participation among some very influential groups: Sustainable Finance Institute in Asia, the Conservation Finance Alliance, the Finance Catalyst program run out of the EU, which is coming into the Pacific region with emerging, or rather renewable energy projects, blended finance. And the managers at the bottom, Funding Societies is the largest crowdfunding platform in Southeast Asia. They are ready to help run the credit platform. And August 1 is unique in being a private equity early stage manager with an excellent 8-year record, similar to Funding Societies in length of record. And they also run the Port XL Singapore, which is a maritime accelerator for Singapore, quite a unique position. So we've identified these 2 as excellent first partners or allocations to get the capital going on equity and debt respectively. Commercial banks and fund managers will also be engaged on the investment arm. Helping hands are welcome and comments are welcome as well. Thanks very much.
Yeah, Radhika, just to interrupt you, I don't know how you want to sequence this. Would we have questions for Michael, or we have Ambassador Thomson deliver his remarks? How would you like to do it?
I think we should take the questions at the end and give Ambassador, His Excellency, the Ambassador Peter Thomson, a chance to offer his reflections and keynote, and then we can take all the questions at the end, if that's all right with colleagues. And yeah, we'll be coming back to you, Michael, to ask about the role of the platform, why a platform, and how just regular project funding is not enough, and all the stuff that goes into actually getting finance. Thank you for walking us through all of that. Over to you, Your Excellency, for your keynote, high-level reflections, post-COP reflections on what it'll take to get investment into the blue economy, which is so sorely needed at this point of time. Thank you for making time for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me clearly, Radhika?
Yes, perfectly.
Thank you. First, 2 points before I read you my prepared remark. What Michael was just presenting is of great interest to me, and I'd be grateful if all the presentations could be sent to me at the end of the webinar. Not as a personal indulgence, it's the fact that at the UN Ocean Conference in June next year, there will be a sustainable blue economy investment forum, which we're arranging on the shoulder of the conference. The Portuguese city of Cascais will host that. And so we're building content for that. So that's one. The second is that it's actually in my remarks, but listening to Michael speak there, it really brought home to me how all my career, I've heard the refrain, and I've been in rural development for 50 years now, and in spirit at least, but that's what I started off in Fiji, digging pit latrines, putting in village water supplies, building seawalls, community halls, that sort of thing. And trying to also get into what was not called sustainable blue economy then. It was just, projects for the aquaculture was something that was a nut we could never quite crack, but we wanted to get into that sort of thing. Ever since then, through to when I was president of the board of UNDP, I heard the same refrain: Peter, we've got all the money you need, but you just haven't got the projects, right? For somebody who's from the field, that is the worst thing you can say, because I could sit here today and make a list of 10,000 towns in Southeast Asia that need sewage plants, right? There's 10,000 projects. I'll give it to you in 12 hours time. So it's not a refrain which is acceptable anymore for those that have got the money to say there are no projects. So what Michael was addressing there, hopefully, is one of the ways of cracking that nut. But one of the suggestions that I have is that we should send out an army of project writers, to any country that will accept them, and we will just write up all the projects, and then there'll be no excuse for the funders. So anyway, that's remarks from the field, listening to what Michael was saying there. Let me quickly give you the remarks that I had prepared. And can I say that I'd been asked to prepare something which is sort of post-Glasgow in the context of our time. So this is not reporting from the field, really. This is reporting from somewhere high up in the international sphere, I suppose, the context of our times, let's call this. So all courtesies observed, and many thanks to UNDP and UNEP for giving me the privilege of addressing you all. So I'm presenting my remarks on investment in the sustainable blue economy today from the perspective of the UN's SDG 14, our universal goal to conserve and sustainably use the ocean's resources. And as we emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic, it's crucial that we dedicate our efforts on a global scale in defense of a healthy ocean. You may have heard my daily mantra: there can be no healthy planet without a healthy ocean, and the ocean's health has been measurably in decline for some time now. So I won't go into the details of that decline in my remarks today, but in case you're not fully aware, we, and I mean all of us, have been party to driving the decline in the ocean's health. So it would be disingenuous were I to ignore it entirely in what I have to say today. As I'm sure you know, anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions are the chief cause of the ocean's accelerating and deleterious rates of deoxygenation, warming, and acidification. And due to excess CO2 emissions, the ocean is acidifying at the fastest rate in the history of the planet, and it will be extremely difficult, if not impossible, for many ocean ecosystems and species to adapt to such a rapid change. Coupled with ocean warming, escalating acidification is bringing the survival of coral reefs into question. As bunkers of marine biodiversity, coral reefs are essential elements in the ocean's health. And as I've said, the latter is vital to the health of planet Earth. As well as acidification, the ocean is increasingly experiencing changes to circulation of currents and dramatic melting of sea ice, deoxygenation, marine life moving away from the tropics, and through warming of sea surface temperatures, increasing frequency and intensity of tropical cyclones and rising sea levels. The IPCC's special report on the ocean and cryosphere states that sea level rise is accelerating at an unprecedented rate, and that sea level rises of 2 meters by the end of this century cannot be ruled out. Marine ecosystems such as mangroves and seagrass meadows and salt marshes are, in terms of area covered, 10 times more effective at sequestering carbon dioxide than terrestrial forests. In spite of their massive sequestration benefits to us, human activity is destroying these coastal habitats at an alarming rate. So the protection of these blue carbon assets must be top of mind for both climate and ocean action. What the ocean gives, it can take away. So preservation and restoration of the ocean's blue carbon assets is vital to our best interests. And I do believe the sustainable blue economy must embrace that and get those assets onto the balance sheets of our nations, of the planet, obviously, but of companies as well that are part of the problem. The high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy has demonstrated that ocean-based mitigation options could reduce GHG emissions by nearly 4 billion tons of CO2 per annum in 2030, and by more than 11 billion tons per annum in 2050, relative to projected business-as-usual emissions. Reductions of this magnitude are larger than the emissions from all current coal-fired power plants worldwide. The basic fact is that we need to keep carbon in place the way nature intended it to be, wherever that might be. And that while our understanding of the ocean's properties is still limited, we know it is the planet's largest carbon sink, so that closely protecting the special places within it has become urgent work at hand. The science is clear. We need to protect and rewild a large portion of the planet. Fully protected areas deliver immense benefits to ecosystem restoration and human well-being, including food provisioning. The blue carbon ecosystems within marine protected areas provide a massively powerful tool in carbon sequestration. And through blue carbon ecosystems, we can see the inseparable linkage between the ocean's health, climate change, and biodiversity, and why the UN processes on these matters must be closely interwoven. Nature-based solutions are a critical element in building the resilience of ecosystems, societies, and economies to respond to climate change, estimated as having the capacity to provide a third of our mitigation needs. Since financing for nature-based solutions remains comparatively low, we are called upon to urgently change the paradigm by accounting the value of blue natural assets, identifying investment needs, and providing the necessary incentives, investment mechanisms, and finance. That's what we're addressing at this webinar, I guess. Lest there remains doubt in anyone's mind, let me repeat the fact that SDG 14's nemesis is humankind's continuing burning of fossil fuels. The massive scale at which we burn fossil fuels, creating the greenhouse gases blanketing our atmosphere, are commensurately changing the composition of the ocean. The ocean has absorbed 90% of the heat from global temperature rises, so it should not be a surprise that immense changes are underway and that we now witness such phenomena as escalating marine heat waves, rising sea levels, and the death of coral reefs. So in your deliberations today, I ask you to think about how we're going to stop that decline. And I believe the basic answer to that question lies in the governance of our activities with a logical and ethical dedication to sustainability, along with the restoration of respect for and balance within the embrace of Mother Nature. To achieve that, we need to accept that linear exploitation of finite planetary resources is a dead-end street, and that we've reached a point on humanity's path where global transformation to circular, recycling systems of production and consumption has become a straightforward matter of survival or not. What more must we do? We will have to muster the necessary courage and grasp the nettle of international consensus that is so sorely required at international gatherings these days. The UNFCCC's 26 in Glasgow made solid progress, but there remains much more to achieve. And we've already begun working towards COP27 in Egypt in order to improve on targets to reach net zero carbon ahead of 2050. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, under the universal mandate from 193 member states of the United Nations, the second UN Ocean Conference will be co-hosted by the governments of Portugal and Kenya in Lisbon, 27 June to 1st of July next year. And when we arrive in Lisbon next year, we must be ready to put in place the science-based solutions necessary to stop the decline in the ocean's health. And as we voyage into a future made increasingly precarious by global warming, we must begin to grasp the importance of investing in the sustainable blue economy. Many believe that in the not too distant future, the sustainable blue economy will be the basis of human security. And as a loving grandfather, I count myself amongst them. At COP26 in Glasgow, I repeatedly called for movement of the climate finance needle in the direction of the sustainable blue economy. And I'm pleased to say there's evidence that the needle is moving. I keep saying that we don't want millions or billions of dollars to flow into the sustainable blue economy. We want trillions of dollars. Why? Because we need those dollars to secure the health of the ocean, and thereby the planet, and thereby the well-being of our grandchildren. We need the trillions of dollars to decarbonize the global shipping fleet and the ports that service it, funding a transformation that has already begun, moving from powering our ships with the filth of bunker oil to pollution-free green hydrogen. We need the trillions of dollars invested to feed the future through sustainable aquaculture and farming the ocean to produce new, sustainable, nutritious forms of yet to be commercialized seaweeds, phytoplanktons, and other ethical non-fed forms of aquaculture. We need the trillions for the scientific research of the ocean that will help us understand the currently unknown properties that, amongst other broad benefits, will secure our health in the post-antibiotic age. We need the trillions because if we invest now in offshore energy, in wind and tidal and wave and other ocean technologies, we'll have all the renewable energy we need many times over to power sustainable ways of life on this planet. So, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, at this webinar, you'll be focusing on how to accelerate investments into the sustainable blue economy. And I understand you'll be considering the policy frameworks needed to support enterprises and investments in the sustainable blue economy. And in this context, I recommend that you give further attention to the recent publications relating to the sustainable blue economy finance principles hosted by UNEP FI, some of which I'm involved in. If in fact it is structural inefficiencies that block private capital from being part of the ocean investment solutions, I call upon UNEP and UNDP and the Asian Development Bank and others in a position to do so, to iron out these without further delay. As I mentioned, as someone from a rural development background in a small island developing state, I never again want to hear in my life the refrain that there's plenty of money waiting to be disbursed, but there just aren't enough bankable projects. Fix it. The Poverty Environment Action Program, launched in 2018 by UNDP and UNEP, has demonstrated how improved environmental sustainability can improve livelihoods and gender equality. I'm sure you'll all be interested to hear more about these outcomes in today's webinar. So, ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to the fruits of your deliberations being presented at the UN Ocean Conference in Lisbon next year, or at the Sustainable Blue Economy Investment Forum, to which I referred, being held on the shoulder of the conference. And I thank you for your attention today and apologize again for being late.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Actually, with your keynote coming at the end, you know, we're actually at a very good place, because you've pointed us to some, you know, some potential next steps, and also, you know, reflected on some of the presentations and the material in the presentations. I mean, while finance is dry and boring and tough for many people, we have to get through those weeds, if you like, precisely to understand what it takes to get those investments, and how we package these different things so that we can deal with these kind of asset classes. Sometimes you have people who are willing to invest but can't be bothered, you know, to deal with the small stuff, and just want large projects. But what people need quite often is really much smaller amounts of money and to be able to work. Before we get to the questions and answers, there's already one in the chat, and I encourage colleagues to put in their questions there or raise your hand. Let me turn to Thomas Kessler from ADB in case he'd like to come in and also take you up on some of the things that you mentioned. Thomas, over to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Radhika, and thanks, for this great setup. I think my comments will be very short. I just would like to build up on Michael's presentation, and just very much express my appreciation for the work we're doing together with UNDP and UNEP to bring this initiative forward. I guess, as Michael said, we're still in some of the phase where things needs to be finalized and really set up. But I think on the good news, we have some grant funding allocated already that allows us to start a pilot next year. And together with your support, we will also be able to approach other institutional partners, development partners, such as the European Investment Bank and others who have showed some interest to support based on their practical experience, also as outlined by Michael on the Blue Invest Europe platform they have been created some 2-3 years ago, and which shows a good track record and good success, and where we can leverage lots of lessons learned, of course, to be adjusted to the Asian context. But I guess the initiative really focuses on this missing middle, the SME, that have a huge impact in Asia on the stages of the ocean. And we want to help them to make a positive impact. And of course, yes, it's about aggregating these SMEs, which in total will require the trillion of funding that is requested. And I think it's only through this work that will be supported by a digital platform with lots of education and know-how transfer, with some brands to take good examples and to put them in a form that they can be replicated, scaled across the region, that we're gonna be able to attract the interest also of the private financing, private sector financing, and that we're gonna end up reaching our goals. So yeah, again, I think we are very excited, on this cooperation, and we hope to be able to present some concrete reporting in the course of the beginning of next year, where we're going to launch this platform and hopefully report successful achievements very soon. So just a few reflections from my side. Of course, this is all in the context with the healthy ocean action plans that have been launched by ADB in 2019 already, where we commit 5 billion of funding in order to support the development of blue economy in the Asian Pacific. So with this, back to you, Radhika.
Thank you very much, Thomas. And I hope that collectively we can help tap into those billions that ADB has put forward for a healthy ocean economy. And by the time the conference comes up next June, that we will have concrete results to show for the platform. There's a question in the chat, which I'm hoping that Michael, you can answer, which is really on the scope of the blue economy and whether it can also be, and what it would take to unleash the economic potential of the lakefront. You know, not just oceans in the context of Kenya. And then maybe you can also just, you know, tell us very simply for all the lay people out there, why a platform? You know, what is this platform? You know, what does it do? And how, you know, how do we get beyond the usual small projects that many donors are used to, you know, used to supporting? So over to you. And then if there are other questions, please put up your hands or put the question in the chat or in the Q&A. Over to you, Michael.
Okay. Now, the first issue on connection between the land and the sea, where we deal with that directly is on the pollution issues, the destruction of marine ecosystems by runoff from urban and agricultural and industrial sources from the lakes and rivers going down into the ocean. We directly looked at that and various solutions that are engaging not only infrastructure needs, but also the companies that are operating, the small and medium companies that are operating in that, both coming up with better means of avoiding pollution and the circular systems that Peter mentioned, as well as the you know, the larger infrastructure needs around the ports and so forth. So that's where we do engage the lakes and rivers in the sense of dealing with pollution runoff, which is a very, very important issue. So on why do we need a platform? Well, it also gets back to Ambassador Thomson's point that yes, there's lots of money out there floating around looking for places to put it, and it needs specific things. I've been in finance for some 35, 40 years, I guess now. Yeah, 40 years. And they have a checklist, and you have to get to a certain size, and you have to have certain structural issues well thought out and prepared. Projects need to be aggregated, therefore, and they need to be well screened, and they need some de-risking, because here we're talking about not only many of the blue industries are the ones that are perceived as quite risky. Everything offshore is a little more risky than onshore, for instance. But also these are emerging markets or developing markets, and it's a very diverse area, a lot of very remote islands. So it has unique risk characteristics that need to be addressed by blended finance. And so that's where you need a platform, and there's no other way to do it. And we have models, not only the European one, but many others. In particular now is exciting with some of the nature-based solutions that also Ambassador Thomson mentioned. And that will be part of this platform, as I noted on the Blue Finance MPA project in the Philippines that we already did a full dossier on. So a digital platform also means it's ongoing. This is not a one-stop fix. This is not a big sovereign loan, a mega infrastructure loan fund. Those exist, and we're collaborating with them, and they're very exciting. But to get full engagement of the communities on the ground, and on the coastlines, and in all these regions, you have to deal with the 90% of the economy that is there, which is the small and medium ones. And the only way to do that is through a digital platform that has the aggregating capability on the project side and the matchmaking on the investor side and de-risking.
Thanks, Michael. And I don't see any of the other questions, but I have two, in fact. Both for, sorry, go ahead, Ambassador.
Yeah, can I just respond quickly to Eddie's question from Kenya, and also building on Michael's response and Thomas's earlier comments about aggregating. As you were all speaking and as that question was being posed, first of all, Eddie, I certainly regard the sustainable blue economy as including lakes and rivers, as well as the ocean. It's the hydrological cycle. I don't see how you can separate them other than by creating some weird barrier in your mind. So definitely the problems of Lake Victoria are the problems of the ocean as well. And if you look at them, they're very similar problems. So similar solutions. But this aggregation thing, gives a great example here for Africa, okay? The aquaculture, which is the main way that we eat fish protein today, is in the main produced in ponds in China and Southeast Asia. So already an example there of how the sustainable blue economy goes beyond the shorelines. Africa as a continent has only about, I don't know, 2% or 3% of the world's aquaculture output, right? Why can't we transfer the Asian knowledge of aquaculture to the African continent with appropriate species, tilapia and things like that, catfish, all of which taste good when they're fried up. And instead of trying to do that on an SME basis, obviously it has to be SME as it is in Asia, but how do you fund that? You aggregate it. You have a huge fund which can be run by UNDP, FAO partnership or something like that, so that if you're a small guy on the shores of Lake Victoria and you want to get into aquaculture, you know who to go to, and the money is there and the process is there. The platform, if you like, is there for you as an SME to start your aquaculture project. And I think aggregation, as Thomas said, is key to this. Anyway, I was just giving a practical example there that could actually transform nutrition in Africa in quite a short time.
Thank you for that. And my question to both you, Ambassador, and Sofiane, is that do you see, because all of this also calls for a change in mindsets. And one of the things that at least I noticed is that with some of the small island states, you know, COVID, which cut off transport and, you know, increased the, if you like, the lack of connectedness, in some ways was good because we started to see much more focus on supporting local food production, for example, in the Maldives, you know, that got a bit of a leg up. Also thinking about, you know, renewable energy, precisely because you couldn't get, you know, diesel and some of the usual forms of fuels. So do you see COVID contributing to a change in mindsets, which is so important, you know, for facilitating the shift towards the sustainable blue economy, and changing, you know, the way we invest, the way we work, live, eat. So if you and Sofiane could come in on that.
Sophia, would you like to respond first?
Okay, thanks. I can start. Yes. Thank you, Radhika, for the question. And I would say absolutely yes, because first, like with COVID now, we'll see like small producers, be it like small scale fishermen or small aquaculture. They are connecting directly with their clients. They are going the extra mile and doing kind of deliveries using some kind of digital tools, mobile phones, etc. And also now living in Fiji, I have seen this firsthand. Like now we're working on this blue bond, and the government has chosen aquaculture again to try to invest in there, because I said now we've realized with COVID we want to invest more in our food security. So it is COVID also pushed again this revived, and Ambassador Thomson spoke earlier about aquaculture in Fiji, and now this idea is being pushed back, and there's a will to enhance food security on the islands of Fiji because of COVID. Over from my side, thanks.
Yeah.
Is the Sovereign Blue Bund, sorry about that, going to be looking at channeling some of the resources towards food, local food security and production?
For this blue bond, the focus now is MPAs, green shipping, and aquaculture, sustainable fisheries and aquaculture.
Sorry, Ambassador, over to you.
Yeah, no, just thinking, you know, as somebody, as I said, from a rural development background, I think I got it wrong when I was a young person. I thought, you know, we were going to make the rural areas more attractive than the urban areas, but that's not what's actually happened, whether it's a small island developing state or wherever. We've all moved to cities. So, you know, that is a problem for food production. Because, well, I actually have no doubt that we can feed ourselves locally. It's just a matter of changing our consumption patterns. And so when I was referring to the future of sustainable blue economy food production, you know, I'm glad that aquaculture is now getting the serious attention, and that seaweed obviously is also seen as a global solution. But I actually want to go a lot further than that. I want to see us farming the sea. I talk about marine tofu, and people say, what do you mean by that? And I say, well, I don't actually know because it hasn't been invented yet, but I am absolutely sure that our grandchildren will be eating marine tofu. I didn't eat tofu until I went to open the Fiji embassy in Japan in the 1980s. No, the world was not eating sushi then. It had not heard of it. Only in Japan was there sushi. And now look at it, from the Congo to Alaska, you can eat sushi, right? So food is fashion. So we will be eating sustainable seafoods, which are based upon, I would say, phytoplankton is the obvious source for a marine tofu, which exists in such plenitude. And, you know, the whales must be laughing at us the way we ignore it as a food source. So small island developing states are obviously well placed to be part of this farming of the ocean. It's not everywhere. It's where you have to go to nutrient-rich parts of the ocean where there are upwellings and so on. But we could be farming phytoplanktons. We can actually do that on land, to be honest, and producing future food from it. So we will, our grandchildren will be eating differently, and I've seen that in my lifetime, the way that changes. So we just have to be positive in our thinking about how we're going to handle this. As far as just to quickly answer your question about COVID, though, I'm a little bit worried that COVID has been a setback for SDG 14. Certainly on the pollution stake, on our attitude to plastics, this has all been negative for SDG 14. But in terms of making us think about future security, I think it has, as you say, been a positive.
Thank you. We are over time and I don't see any questions. I'm just wondering if any of the panelists have questions for each other. Otherwise, we can move to close the session.
Just a reminder request there to Michael. If I could see your presentation, I'd be very, very grateful if it could be sent to me. Thank you.
And the Knowledge Product Plus, because I think there is a lot of rich material there. And I think there'll be a lot in there to chew on.
Thank you very much.
Any final questions, reflections from anyone?
Can I, Radhika?
Sure.
I wanted to add something else following the comments of Ambassador Thomson about sustainable aquaculture. Now, actually, I wanted to say that there's now a push for restorative aquaculture. So, I mean, aquaculture, rather than trying to have sustainable aquaculture and decreasing our impact, now there's a big push for this restorative aquaculture where some species like seaweed and seashells like oysters can actually improve the condition of coastal areas. They can capture carbon, they can clean the water, they can capture nutrients, they are refugia for small fish, etc. So it actually can even improve the condition. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to ask Anna or other colleagues if they can also put the link to where participants can find the presentations and the link to the Blue Invest Asia Knowledge Product as well. You know, because we see in the questions that Eddie and others are asking for the presentations. But let me offer thanks from my side for what has been a very rich discussion. And turn to Jonathan Gilman from PEA to offer closing remarks and any next steps, reflections to close us off. Thank you. And over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Radhika. And first and foremost, thank you to all the participants for joining us today. And please do contact us after the meeting if you'd like to discuss in more detail any of the initiatives we talked about, or if you'd like to partner with us, we're happy to discuss that. Thanks also to Ambassador Thomson for joining us today. And I think the group of ADB, UNDP, and UNEP will be happy to follow up with you and keep you updated on progress on this Blue Invest Asia fund, and your ideas would be welcome in that regard. Also to my UNEP and UNDP presenters, and of course Radhika for moderating, and also to Michael, who has really been working with the three agencies very closely over the last year in developing this idea of Blue Invest Asia. The only additional point I wanted to make was, if we want to address the blue economy as a UN system, if we want to provide the best support possible we can to member states and communities, we really do need a one UN approach. And as you know, the Secretary General is pushing the UN reform agenda now, the core of which is the one UN approach where we work together. And I think the Poverty Environment Action Initiative and this webinar today, where we brought together knowledge from across UNDP and UNEP on the blue economy, and we're working together to deliver it jointly through Poverty and Environment Action, is a good example of UN reform in action. And I think it's going to provide stronger support to member states than we would be otherwise able to do and deliver as individual agencies. So on that note, I'll wrap up on my side, and thank you very much all for joining us today. Goodbye, colleagues.